Welcome to Matcha Mamas. I'm Silver, your host, and this is where we get real about parenting, the beautiful, the messy, and everything in between. No perfect answers here, just a space to be yourself, connect, and find some comfort in the shared experience of it all. So grab your matcha, settle in, and let's talk.
Mama.
Well, welcome back to my kitchen. This episode is pre-recorded, as was my first one. So I don't know how my first episode was received, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. I hope that there are more of you here with me. If it's just a few of us for a while, that's fine as well. Everyone is welcome, and I appreciate every single one of you. Having some matcha today. I'm almost done my matcha, but I am having it in a Sugar House ceramics cup. They are based out of Nova Scotia, which is my girl Jem's hometown because she left me after being in the same province and city as me for 20 years. So yeah, I'm not salty about that at all. But if she can get me Sugar House ceramics, maybe I'll forgive her, but I probably won't. Anyways, we're starting today's episode off with a very awesome attitude. I don't have my dishwasher going this time. Last time I did, and had to, hopefully you couldn't hear that. I had to edit that out. I think I have my headphones on backwards. Hold on. I am. Okay, that feels a lot better. Hello there. Sorry. A little bit chaotic start to this week's episode, but this is the first part of a multi-episode series on preparing for pregnancy. It will be a focus on mental health, specifically working on my OCD and how I transitioned off of birth control, which was so fun. Next episodes, we're going to go over kind of financial planning and like health and diet preparation. As someone who is not a financial planner and or a diet or health practitioner, period. This is just my experience, and I want to share it with you and give you some guiding resources of how to get yourself these people. Okay, so let's talk about my mental health, which is so fun. Now that I've been in therapy for quite some time, specifically focusing on my OCD, we've kind of come to the conclusion that I've had OCD for mostly my entire life. I had a little bit of an experience with psychosis a few years ago when things really started kicking off for me, and that does tend to happen, especially women when they're in like their 20s, early 20s, and that definitely happened to me, and it started to pretty much be completely all consuming, and I was very mentally unwell, and it caused me to lose friendships and opportunities, and I wasn't able to live my life the way I wanted to. So maybe if you're coming to this podcast and it might be a little bit extreme for you, if not, hey. And I was talking to my therapist the other day because when I started seeing her was when I decided that I really needed some specific help. We were talking about how amazing it is that how far I've come and how I've been able to have a healthy mind throughout, well, healthy-ish, okay? Healthy-ish. OCD's under control. A lot of other things came up. But the fact that I was able to handle everything that I went through, just in general and mental health-wise, is so impressive. Like, I am very impressed with myself, and she is the best therapist ever. You cannot have her. She's mine. I don't even really need her all the time anymore, but I will not go. But we're talking about how she has some other clients that are women around my age who really want to get pregnant, but they're terrified because of their OCD and they don't think that they can ever get pregnant. And I remember being there and being like, I cannot live like this and have a child. There is no way in hell that I could care for a child and be present for a child while I cannot even leave the bathroom because I think that I need to pull these paper towels a certain amount of times. Otherwise, there's going to be a plane crash. That is how OCD works. Like a very, very, very small screenshot of what it can be like. I have different themes, which like, I don't know how much I want to go into them because it is really personal. And honestly, I struggle with it and I am here talking about it, but I struggle with the embarrassment and the judgment of it because of like the certain things that I would have to do so that I could like go on with my day. Like even like, honestly, I had a thing with my matcha bowl. I would have to tap it a certain amount of times. And like some people were like, oh, that's such a cute little habit. And I was like, oh yeah, it's like by making music on my untouchable so that a car crash doesn't hit a power line. Like, it's so weird how OCD works, and like I've gotten to know my OCD quite well. I visualize mine as No Face from Spirited Away, because the more you feed it, the bigger it gets and the more in control. So I have been spending the past few years starving my OCD, and it's not dead. Like, it's never going to die. It still follows me around. But if you have watched Spirited Away, you'll know that like No Face, the monster, gets to a point where it just sits with Yubaba's twin, which I can't remember her name, and knits. And that's how I feel now. Like, I'm Yubaba's twin and my OCD is knitting beside me, and like every once in a while it's like, hey, what about this? And I'll feed it, and then we go through that whole thing. But like, I've gotten to a point where I can have a normal life. I know that OCD impacts everyone differently and mental health impacts everyone differently. But for me specifically, I can say with mine, I've gotten to a point where I've made it my bitch. That was not my reality a few years ago. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Yeah, I got to the point where I struggled a lot with dissociation as well. And I started having it's not necessarily, it's very similar to like symptoms of mania. Like, I thought that certain like TV shows were written for me specifically. And that's how it would like kind of trigger me. Like, I can't watch Modern Family because it would trigger me into me thinking they wrote this episode for me, and it scared the shit out of my husband. And like, I had these crazy thoughts. It got to a point where like it was hard for me to distinguish reality from my thoughts. So that's when I was like, you know what, I need help. Like, I really need help. And I have a lovely friend, Kelly, who I used to work with. And like, this might sound very scary, but I was working in mental health during this time. And like, whenever we had certain clients that like would come up and talk about certain things, I was like, oh yeah, like, I did not say that to them, but in my mind, I was like, I do that. Is that not okay? But like, I knew it wasn't okay. Like, how I presented and how I thought forwardly in the world versus like what was happening in the back end was completely different. But I would talk to Kelly because we were friends and we're getting to know each other. And I'd be like, yeah, like, da 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 da. And then she's like, ooh, Silver, that is not normal. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of starting to realize that maybe I'm like really not okay. I went and got diagnosed. I didn't have a diagnosis at this point. Like, I was always told I had general anxiety disorder, and I do have PTSD, and I've had to do EMDR therapy, but that kind of makes sense because of specific traumas that I experienced and that I had to go to therapy for and to like process those specific traumas. So I thought like, oh yeah, I'm traumatized, I can get the therapy for that. There would always be like little things that would come up and like how I would think about the situation that happened to me, and like there was little like things, like there was like a little flavor of something else being wrong, even though it made sense why I was having reactions to things and the triggers that reminded me or related to what had happened to me. I went to therapy. Like, I would go to therapy and I would process these traumas, and then every single one of my therapists, I think I had about 4 different therapists that I went through, because like it's hard to find one that works for you, but they would always say like, we think you have OCD. You know, fair enough to them. They're like, I'm not equipped for that, so we're not gonna open that box. Okay, cool, whatever. So finally I was like, I need to open this fucking box. So I go to see my psychiatrist, who has passed away, which I just found out, which honestly I don't know how to feel about, because I was like, maybe I should go talk to him again, and he's dead. So anyways I went to go see him, and I did like a full diagnosis. He was definitely not my cup of tea. Like, I like to like chit chat and giggle about my mental health. And when he was reading my mental health diagnosis, like assessment to me, I laughed out loud. Like, I was like, haha, that's not mine. Like, hee. And he's like, this is yours. And I'm like, no. That's not me. That's not right. Like, no, like definitely in denial, definitely like did not know how to process, because like I worked in mental health. It was my job to work with people who had the things I have. Sometimes that's really great, like from a peer lens, like peer support, counselors, and you can be mentally ill, like fairly mentally unwell. Like, you could be fairly mentally unwell and you can have like all these things going on with you and still be a great fucking counselor. And you can even sometimes, I would say, almost like better in a way where you can actually understand and relate more and have more empathy for the person that you're working with. So I was good at my job. That wasn't an issue. My job was the easiest part of my life at that point. Yeah, so when he told me that I had like a severe anxiety disorder, I had severe OCD and depression and an excoriation disorder, which I didn't even know what that was. And then I thought about like high school and like pulling out my hair and like picking at things and whatever. And I was like, oh yes, that's okay, fine. So then I was looking into therapists who specialize in OCD in my area. And this is again why I'm like, you cannot believe in fate. That's fine. That's your choice. I don't know how I can't believe in fate. I like to pretend that I'm like atheistic and whatever, but like honestly, I am so confused about my spirituality and I'm just fully like diving into it because that feels right. Anyway, that's another thing. But so I email this therapist who specializes in OCD and she's got a doctorate, like whatever. And I was like, she sounds great. So she emails me back and she's like, I am fully booked, full wait list, but I looked at your assessment and I can see that you probably really need some help. And I have a student. And is it okay if you see her? Like it'll be cheaper while she's doing her doctorate. But she does have like her master's and whatever. And I was like, okay, well, I'll meet with her and see how it goes. And I talked to her on the phone, totally embarrassed myself the first time. And I was like, great, she's going to hate me because I've embarrassed myself because I thought that she was the gal who I originally emailed. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm supposed to be meeting with her student. And she's like, yeah, bitch, I am her student. Well, she was so lovely about it anyway. I was just like, okay, well, and I'm sure she doesn't even remember that, but I do. And I met her. I think it's the closest I can say to like a godly experience because she spoke and we talked and I felt saved. I don't know how else to explain that. You're going to save me. You're the person that I've been looking for and you're going to save me. And yeah, that sounds like a lot of pressure to put on a person, but it's also her job. Her job was to save me or help me and whatever. We talked about it and we like little homework pieces and we've been working on it for a long time. Anyway, I can talk more about that specifically if anyone is really interested, but I think the majority of you don't have OCD necessarily. Basically, I got support and I got to a point where she and I both were like, I think I'm ready to have a child. And luckily, like stars aligned with a lot of other things, which I'll talk about more in the next episodes. For me, they did offer me medication, which I am 100% all for, okay? Just make that very clear. But the dosage that was recommended to me would almost be like a sedative. I have a big personality and I was terrified who I would be on that medication. And I was like, you know what? Let me try with therapy, like weekly therapy. It was intense. It was really hard. I did exposure therapy. It was awful, but I got to the other side and like I can handle my shit now. So fucking works. It was like I had to prioritize this. Like I wanted to be pregnant. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to also just feel better. I didn't want to be the person I was anymore. Like I couldn't do anything. It was so frequent that like I would have these terrible panic attacks where I would think I was dying. Like I thought I was literally like this was the end for me. And I would crawl under tables like a full grown adult, normal seeming person just crawling under tables and having a fucking freak out. And I didn't want to be that person anymore. I couldn't be that person. Like pregnancy or not, I could not be that person anymore. And I was fully prepared that if I could not figure this out, I was not going to get pregnant. I was not going to do that to myself. I was not going to do that to my child. And the possibility of me not being able to figure it out and get my mental health in check was devastating. I was like, that's not an option. My goal was to be a mom, be a healthy mom, healthy mind, healthy soul, whatever. That was my goal. It was a huge priority. Cut people out of my life that were not beneficial for my recovery. I did everything I could. I didn't end up needing medication, which did make things easier-ish. I feel like a lot of it would have been easier with medication. A lot of it was easier to get pregnant without. There's a lot of medications, which is again, I'm not a fucking doctor. There's a lot of medications you can be on and get pregnant, and there's a lot of medications that you can't be on, or like you have to lower your dosage. I have a good friend, which hopefully she ever feels comfortable talking about it, will share on the podcast. But like, she had to lower her dosage to get pregnant, and that was really hard. So I was very grateful that I didn't end up having to go that route, because it could have been a challenging adventure off of it or to a lower dosage. Yeah. And like having, I can't express seeking treatment for your mental health, period. Obviously completely life-changing. Like if you can find a good therapist, which like it sucks and it's awful to have to tell your story again. And it's awful to like put all your trust and faith into someone and then they let you down. Like I had a therapist who took a personal call while I was like in the middle of sharing something completely awful. And she's like, I'm sorry, is it okay if I take this call? It wasn't important. Like I was listening to it because I was there and it wasn't important. Oh my God, I'm paying for your time, one. And two, like you just completely let me down. You completely lost my trust. If it was something very important or like if she had a family, whatever, but it was about like a plumber or something, which is important. Sure. It was just so devastating. Like, I had other therapists that were like, that would just tell me that like I was too much for what they could handle. In hindsight, yeah. At that time, it made me feel like a total freak. Finding good support and finding a therapist that is a good fit for you and that you trust and that is also helpful and smart and puts the work in with you, it makes like, it literally is day and night. Like I would not be here. Honestly, I would not be here. And I would not be a mother without my therapist. And I love her dearly. There was also talking about getting off of birth control. I want to talk about that. So my decision to get off birth control, I was on a season 8 birth control, like oral contraception. I was on that for about 9 or 10 years. It was a very high dosage birth control. I had to go on that one because I was on like generic brands or lower dosage and I was still getting my period through them. I also had insane heavy periods and I was completely anemic. I had to go on it anyway because I was bleeding too much, and season 8 birth control made it so that I was only getting my period every 3rd month, which was fantastic. Let me say that was the best part. Being pregnant, one of the best parts besides the obvious is not getting your period. Getting your period sucks, and I've been getting 2 periods since giving birth. Literally never got that beautiful break of when you don't get your period postpartum, and I am breastfeeding, but I was one of the lucky chosen ones that have just been bleeding this whole time, which I should have known because that happened to my mother. So that I am a Smith girl in that sense. Yeah, I do miss that. But it was a really heavy dose. Honestly, I think a huge part of being on birth control, like a hormonal birth control, and I'm not saying this happens to everyone, okay? But I wish I had known. I could have had other options, but my doctor put me on that birth control because of having to like control my period and obviously also not to get pregnant. And I wish I had known about like non-hormonal alternatives. Like right now I have an IUD and it's non-hormonal. It's a copper one. It's probably contributing to why I'm bleeding so much as well, like as my body adjusts, but I'm also postpartum, so who knows? But yeah, getting off of it was crazy, man. I was losing my mind all over again. And like that kind of led me to my natural path and getting on like supplements and everything, which I will talk about. And I'm going to reach out to my naturopath to see if she'll be willing to discuss that. Maybe not soon, but in the future on the podcast. But I went into it's called Pure Pharmacy. And I went in there and I met this lovely woman. I think her name is Alyssa. And I don't know if I'm just calling her Alyssa because that's my sister's girlfriend's name, whom I love very dearly. But anyway, I think her name is Alyssa. And I walked in there and I was like, help me. Like she asked me how I was and I was like, I'm not well. I'd only been off birth control for like a few weeks. Being on it, like I went through insane withdrawals. Like I was hormonally all over the place, could not control my emotions, really struggled with it. And I was just a complete disaster. So when I went in there, I'll talk about more about this in the future, but like she got me on like a fiber supplement that would help literally shit out the hormones in the birth control to help it pass through my system sooner. That was great, but the impact that birth control had on my body, like it's crazy. It's crazy. It was a necessary decision because I wanted to get pregnant, but I wish I had done that years ago. Like I wish I had known and thought, like I knew about the other options, but I just never thought they were an option for me because like I trusted my doctor and I was like, she never brought it up. So it's obviously not an option for me. And like, maybe it wasn't for my iron levels. I don't know. Like I'm not trying to like shit on my doctor because she is lovely and it was really hard to think about who I could have been all those years if I had not been on birth control. How much of my mental health, I know it, I would always had OCD and anxiety and whatever, but like how much more could I have handled life and how differently could I have moved through life not being on birth control and not having that hormonal influence. Like, I don't know. I try not to like whatever. I'm very curious how that would have gone in another life. In a parallel universe, if Silver is out there off of birth control growing up and going through pivotal moments of her young adulthood, how are you doing? How are you doing off of birth control? Yeah, I was scared coming off birth control. I also, if I'm being transparent, like I hate condoms and I don't know many people who like them, but like I really didn't want to get pregnant and I also couldn't get pregnant. There was like possibility of that impacting a successful pregnancy and healthy child if I had gotten pregnant. So I had to be off of it. They said 3 months minimum, I believe. And then they were like, but 6 months would be great. So I remember like how I planned that out and I like pretty much just stopped it. Like I remember buying my last pack and I was like, after this is done, I'm not doing it anymore. And how crazy that was. And like how big of a decision that felt. And it was a big decision, but like it felt huge and I guess it was huge. Yeah, I think it definitely was a good choice. I just wish I had done it sooner. Now I kind of want to talk about coping mechanisms and support pre-deciding. We're talking about pre-deciding to have a child, not even while you're trying or while you're pregnant. So some coping strategies and support that I would recommend, and everyone does this differently, okay? And I can only share from the experiences in my life. But for me, I like to talk. I have a fucking podcast, and I am a Libra, and I am me. Like, I like to talk. I talk a lot. I know that, and I own that, and I don't give a shit. For me, it was a good choice to talk about it with a few trusted people. Like, I think I talked about it with my family, because I'm close to my family. Like, I talked to my mom about it, my sister. I talked to my really good friend, Anna, Jem, and another friend of mine, and those were pretty much the only people who knew that I was trying, besides my husband. He was very privy to that and involved. But I was like kind of saying to them, especially like when Jem had Noah, I told her, I'm thinking I'm starting to try soon. I'm really nervous, like blah, blah, blah. But she was also freshly postpartum, and she was going through it. So I didn't want to be like, let's sit and talk about my concerns while you're in the trenches of newbornship and motherhood. She's always amazing at being there for me, and you know, she's like one of the most important, lovely people in my life. Yeah. So when Jem had her son Noah, I remember kind of talking to her about it and just being like, you know, I think I'm going to start trying. And when I wasn't successful those couple times, and like when I felt like I was going crazy, like it was so beneficial to talk to her. And my friend Anna, who had gone through a miscarriage before the twins and everything, like we had such important conversations with those women, and especially when they have like young children and just had gone through this experience. It's definitely different than like, not that my mom wasn't helpful or anything like that and supportive and right there with me and crying in her bathroom when we thought I was pregnant and then I wasn't, like right there with me. Like my sister, my mom, like obviously they were absolutely crucial in my support system along with my husband. But like it's so different talking to women who had just gone through that experience or had gone through the experience of trying and miscarrying and everything like that. Having those conversations and not being ashamed of it necessarily. Like, even though I had a lot of judgment and shame and distress about not being pregnant first time because I had like this idea of how it was going to go, which I think we all do. I think everyone wants to get pregnant first try. I don't know anybody who's like, I want to get pregnant like 9th try and like go through that. Like, I have not met a single person, but if you were that person, at a girl, like it was less lonely, I guess, in a time where like getting pregnant and being pregnant is so secretive. It's like when you need the most support and you're going through grief and like the weirdest kind of grief and you have nobody to talk about it with. It's terrible. So I don't regret my choice in sharing with the people I chose to share with everything. Like I told them everything leading up to it, to whatever, like, and that was really helpful for me. However, I also was very aware of how common miscarriages are. I did not have a miscarriage, fortunately, but I knew, and I know myself, like if I were to miscarry, I would need the support of my close circle. Like I could not do that by myself. Like I know that about myself, and sometimes you don't know, right? And there's always the opportunity, and I really, really can't stress enough having a good support system and a good circle around you for when you're doing this, and especially for postpartum. Holy shit, that's when you need people. But especially during this like very pivotal time in your life, it's really good to have people that you can go to if you choose to do so. I was recently talking about this with one of my mom's friends, and she told me that she had a miscarriage, and that she didn't really talk about it with anyone, and that was a good choice for her because she needed to grieve that on her own, versus I would need my husband, I would need my mom, I would need my sister, I would need my close female friends. Like I would really need them during that time. I'm really grateful, and like I think everything happens for a reason. Like the people who were in and out of my life and I would have maybe relied on in the future during a time like that, like, were no longer in my life. I think it was for the best. I think that especially in your 20s and in your like early adulthood, a lot of things happen. A lot of people go in and out of your life, and your circle can become quite small. And what I'm learning throughout this is that is really a good thing. It made a huge difference for me. When I got my period, I had a friend who we made a list of the positives of me not being pregnant, which sounds crazy, right? Like it sounds crazy, but it was so helpful to me at that time. It was just what I needed. It wasn't like a look on the bright side, no empathy or anything like that. It was just, okay, I have an action plan for if I'm not successful in pregnancy this month, I'm going to go eat a shit ton of sushi. I'm going to drink a shit ton of kombucha. I'm going to go, I think I couldn't go on roller coasters or something. Like it was just, it was a whole list of things I could do. And it was called like period party list or something. And I highly recommend you do that if you can. It's not an easy celebration. It was like trying to have some kind of positive in something that is completely devastating come out of the situation. That was really helpful. And I think if you're going to get pregnant, you need to solidify that circle. It's not just for you. It's for the person that you're bringing into the world, or people. Having that support system, I keep going back to my daughter's watching. That's how important my decisions are. My daughter's watching. That's how important it is for the people in her mom's life to treat her well, to support her well, to have empathy for her, so that she will go out in life and seek those people in her friendships. That's all I want for her. And that's all I think any of us want for our children. And like, just, you have to start thinking like a mom or a parent before you get pregnant. It's a huge responsibility. It is. It's a child. It's a life. It's the future. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of pressure. It should be. I don't think anyone should go into this like, oh, I just want to have a child. That's so great. If you think like that, that's great. And if you are like healthy, whatever, like that's fantastic. But I think if you're here and you're listening to this podcast and you're like at the beginning or whatever, you're going to choose to have another child, there's no judgment too if you did not think about all these things before you had a child. Absolutely not. My goal in this podcast is to share any kind of wisdom without judgment. I just want this to be a completely non-judgmental space for you to go and to reflect if you need to, and to have that forgiveness for yourself. If you don't do all these things before you get pregnant, if you get pregnant by accident, whatever, that was meant to happen for you. And I hope and pray having a child changes your world for the better, so that you can change the world for the better, because our children are our future and it is our responsibility, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It does not have to be perfect. You can make mistakes. You can seriously fuck up, and reconciliation, just that after part, is so much more important than making a mistake. What you choose to do with that mistake is so much more important. If you fuck up in parenting, if you accidentally drink kombucha when you didn't know you were pregnant, like, we all do our best, man. They think the desire for all of us, I would imagine, is to be like healthy, financially stable, whatever, before you have a child. But like, fuck, man, how can you have the perfect pregnancy? How can you have the perfect trying to conceive journey? That doesn't exist. I'm giving you tips for what you could try to do and what my experience was, which I'm grateful for. But if it's not yours, that's more than okay. You're safe here. It's safe. There's no judgment. I think those are the main things that helped me, if I'm being just really basic, which was therapy weekly and then bi-weekly and whatever, and having an amazing social circle that was supportive and kind and open for me, and being around other moms, like other new moms, other women who are trying to conceive. That was huge for me. I will say all the like other things because it is true. Like I did a ton of meditation and journaling at that time, and I found it really helpful. And I know everyone says that, and like you don't have to do it if it doesn't work for you. It really did help me. Like I've had a few apps that really carried me through this journey that were really helpful for meditation. And I did journal and I did manifest. And if you're not a manifester, that's totally fine. You're welcome here too. Just keeping yourself busy, doing whatever you can to care for yourself and fill your own cup during that time, because like it's a great practice to get into. I wish I practiced more and more and more, and I will never stop trying to practice. That is the first part. I hope that made sense. I tried my best to create an outline, but you never know where these are going to go. But yeah, the importance on your mental health and preparation towards your pregnancy journey it's so important for you and for your overall well-being and general wellness to get your mental health in check as you prepare for your pregnancy journey. I would love if you could and would care for yourself enough to seek support if that's something that you can do and afford, and if it's a resource available to you. If this podcast could be just a little bit of a help to you during this time, like that's what I'm here for. I hope if you are struggling with mental health challenges, I hope that you have the resources and the ability to get support with that, even if it's just through friends, and free resources available wherever you live. Just try and find anything you can and anything you can afford. Do what you can with what you have. Being pregnant, trying to get pregnant, having a child, like it takes a huge toll on your mental health, for better and for worse. For the better, honestly, not for worse, just for the better. It really challenges you it forces you to work on yourself. And taking care of yourself is taking care of your child. I'm just going to keep throwing these fucking Pinterest quotes at you because I like them. I have a whole board. I love them. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you found something meaningful in my mental health story. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. If you have OCD or anything like that and you're worried if you can get pregnant, I sincerely believe you can. Whatever that has to look like, if that has to be delayed, if you have to be on medication, if you need more support, you can do it. I believe you can do it. If pregnancy looks different for you, if that looks like adoption, if that looks like surrogacy and that's something you can afford, that's more than okay. That is more than okay. Do what is best for you and what is best for your relationship, what is best for your child. However this child needs to come into the world, I think you can make it happen in the most healthy way possible and then the way it's meant to. It's heavy. It's hard. Mental health and pregnancy and trying to conceive is heavy and it's hard. So let's take a deep breath. And let's just let it out, because I felt like that was a little bit heavy for me. So I'm just shaking it off, shaking it away. And yeah, let's talk about something even more fun next time. We're going to be talking about finances and financial preparation and all that stuff. So if you like that shit, join me for the next episode. If you have any questions or anything, you can find me at Matcha Mama's podcast. You can find my personal-ish page at Matcha Silver. You can also watch this, I forgot to say last time, but you can watch this episode on YouTube and you can find it at Matcha Mama's podcast, and you can watch and see me and see what I'm doing in my kitchen with my little cups. But yes, that's all the time we have for today. I am so grateful to have you here, and I hope that you took something from this episode. Yeah, feel free to connect with me in any way that you feel comfortable. Until we meet again on Matcha Mamas, keep pouring into your own cup.